Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're consuming this broadcast. Welcome to BasTalk, a simple, straight talk about your work-life balance, your work-life balance. Essentially, we talk about stuff that happens every day at work, break it down, simplify, and present it to you for you to think, reflect, and react, if you will. There is no mind numbing, life changing advice here. There is no prescriptive do one, two, three things and your life will change forever. If you're expecting any of this, it isn't available in this episode or in this series of Bus Talk. Instead, what it will give you is some things to think about and reflect and introspective. This is something that floats your boat. You have tuned into the right show. If you want to see some of the previous episodes, please go into www.bastalk.in. That's BASTLK.in. And I'll leave the link below for you to subscribe, like, and share with those who care. Okay, without further ado, as always, I look into the corporate neighborhood and see if I could come up with one or two interesting topics for you to think about. And as I peer into the last week or so, I thought I'd bring something that has probably touched you in some shape, size, or capacity in the recent past, or if not recent past, a few years earlier. I'm talking about campus placements and the great Indian expectation. Think of that movie Three Idiots, right? There's one of the protagonists, Raju Rastogi, sitting in front of the campus placement corporate, and he makes that famous one-liner that I get to keep the job, I get to keep the attitude, you can keep your job with you. And I often wonder how many corporates would hire, how many corporates would appreciate that attitude, and how many students got to get into some of those corporates, right? And so I just thought I'll touch a little bit upon some of this madness that happens preceding, during, and just after campus placement. And it involves all the three parties, right? I'll share some thoughts from the student's perspective, from the campus placements committee or the college or the university's perspective, and of course, the parents' perspective. How much money did we invest again? Is my child going to get the highest compensation package, and so on and so forth. So if you're a parent, this will be of interest to you because it will give you some level setting of expectations on what actually happens during the campus placements, and how do you even look at it, right? Both from your own, I know it's your own child, so you might look at it slightly more differently, but ideas to be as objective as possible. Likewise, if you're a college or a university, struggling to get the corporates to hire or take your students, and the placements are not going 100%, what is it that you do? What's happening, and what's the messaging you do to the students? How do you prepare them? And if you're a student, of course, you have a whole world lying in front of you, and you are super excited. And are you ready to take on the real world? So I'll touch upon all these facets. And so, what you should expect versus what you actually get offered, how colleges make placements and what they actually deliver, and then why parents often misunderstand trends, and then companies generally come for hiring, and are they able to, stick to only one college, or are their expectations something different? So I'm going to touch upon all of these things. So sit back, relax. This is a slow burn. So you will need to understand how Bus Talk works. Check out some of the previous episodes, and I'm sure you will find some of this information relevant and useful. Without further ado, let's begin. Upfront, let's start with the student expectations, right? The dream job versus the real job, the peer pressure, social media influence, the myth of the first job is equals, life is set. So many things, right? I think if you're in a 3-year course or in a 4-year course, it's just a year before, right? The penultimate year of your course completion. And this is undergrads or bachelor's course. I refer to them primarily, of course. Folks who are doing masters, they will have a separate understanding. But assuming you've just finished school, then you've got into a college with a 4-year course or a 3-year degree course, and you're in the penultimate year of your course completion. And then that's when you first probably seriously take the conversation about campus placements. Of course, you've heard about it, you've probably seen it, but by the penultimate year, you know that next year, same time, you're going to be sitting in an interview where there'll be some corporates who will visit your campus and look to see if you are best fit for their organization. Clearly, the at this point in your mind, you have a whole bunch of things. You have a lot of conversation reference from your parents, as in whatever has happened in and around society. You are seeing some of your peers, as in your friends and colleagues, who are getting, who also come with their parental information and societal information. Oftentimes, people come across as, oh, the competition is real, and so I know how I'm going to crack this. And then, of course, you talk to your seniors as well, and they give you a completely different picture. So, what exactly happens during a placement conversation, and how does one prep for it? How does one appear for an interview? Let's jump into that bit a little and see. And of course, it's not exhaustive, but I just want to give you an indicator and get you to think about it. Right at the start, when you are appearing for an interview, clearly you know the names of the organization. Then if you're in one of those colleges where there are multiple corporates, it also depends on your culture fitment internally. And it's a question that you should ask, because competency wise, there are multiple ways corporate look at students. One is, you look at attitude, you look at the ability, and the ability to fit in. And if you see a culture fit for this person, of course, the basic eligibility being, are you academically sound, and are your thoughts and are your fundamentals clear? I mean, why do this want to evaluate that? Is because when a hiring manager receives a new cadre of students, they want to see who can ramp up the fastest. Because once you are on the other side, i.e., a job, the clock is ticking, somebody is paying your salary, there is a cost to the company, and so the return of investment starts to factor in much bigger than it ever did before. And so the whole goal is to see that whoever a company hires, whichever student, they have the shortest ramp up time. They can be moldable, they can be coachable, and they've done some bit of homework. So you as a student, if you are appearing for one of these interviews, I think it's very important to read a little bit about the company culture. Of course, the job description. You can go to LinkedIn and see what their core competency is, where they excel. Go into the news section. What have their recent acquisitions happened? What's happening with them? And if it is a public company, you will have a ton of information publicly available. Go to even independent sites like Wikipedia, put in the company name, and see read about the company's history, the growth trajectory, and everything. It gives you an idea about the organization. A great insight would be to tap into their earnings call. Most of these are public companies, and they go into an earnings call end of the financial year. They have to talk about the company financials, the directions, the guidance for the year to come. You can pick up the vocabulary from that conversation, that, oh, okay, they're talking about expanding into the storage space, or in cloud architecture, or in AI, or agentic AI, or something like that. And so you then, if the organization is headed in that way, they're hiring a fresher for this role to develop into this department or this area of expertise. And then you do a little bit of reading over and above what you've been taught about that technology and its applicability in the role in that company. It's very important. Nobody expects you to be the subject matter expert right off the bat, right? That's not the expectation. But I think they would at least expect some degree of thought clarity. It's like, what do you want to do? And more importantly, why do you want to do? And so don't give cosmetic make-believe answers, like, I'm looking for this and challenges, and like, it's been so often used. I mean, technically, it's not wrong that, are you looking for challenges? Yeah. but it's been so often used and abused, and it almost sounds very farcical to me right now. If somebody were to say, why do you want to join our organization? Well, I'm looking for challenges. Well, go do a triathlon if you're looking for challenges, or do the marathon or whatever, right? Why is it that you want to join? So there should be some meaningful reason. And, given that it's your first job, maybe perhaps, and you don't have that kind of experience, so it's okay to say that, at this point, what you have figured out as a part of your career development plan, the reason you chose this particular course is because you liked, for example, technology. And so you have a general liking towards a particular technology, and you want to explore how this technology or this knowledge can be applicable and useful for your organization. I think that message, in whatever way that you want to present it, that's a valid response. What is it that you can add as a delta, as a delta difference? Because if 10 people say the same thing, why should that job or role come to you, and not somebody else, right? So that delta difference has to emerge somewhere, and that's where your personality trait kicks in. Could you have a light sense of humor? I mean, don't go and crack a joke or anything. Can you have a light sense of humor there, and see, you probably have done, you're listening to the same answers over and over again. However, here is how I am different. Here is how I could approach the same thing a little differently. And then back it up with one or two examples from your previous past. It need not be just in your academics, it could be even outside academics. Like, one of the things people love hearing is your cognitive ability, your ability to solve a problem. I think that transcends jobs, it transcends organizations, it transcends roles. Like, there is a problem. How do you approach a problem? How do you analyze a problem? How do you break it down? And how do you solve it? No right or wrong answers, but think back, reflect back, and see if you have done that similar role elsewhere in your years leading up to this interview, and give that example. It could be an example from your if you've played uh, individual sport or team sport. You could pick up some examples from there. You could pick up some examples from what you've heard around your family, some difficult, and how it inspired you, what you took away from it. People like to hear a thinking worker. Like, okay, this person is thinking, is a thinker, and of course a doer. And so you got to balance your ability to, almost like a bias for action, that you have an action that you took charge, you took control, and you solved a problem, but also you displayed amount of EQ, some amount of empathy, and there could be multiple examples. All of this need not be from one example. You could give one or two examples, so that they find some relevance and find some difference from the same commentary that they hear from multiple people. Like, I can tell you from a hiring manager's perspective, on a typical campus hire program, we probably will go to 10, 12 different colleges, probably meet about 50, 100 students, whatever. And the interviews could be in plenty. And of course, there's a group of people, not just one person doing it. But there is a fatigue factor that creeps in over time, that you keep hearing the same thing, the same thing, the same thing. And the moment somebody says something slightly different, wherein my not wacko, different. Slightly different doesn't mean wacko different, right? Slightly different, the it catches attention. It's like a pattern interrupt. What is it that you're doing to interrupt the pattern, catch some attention? And so think about those things. So if I were to just simplify and summarize this for you as a student appearing for a placement, um, and if this is going to be your first job, clearly come across that you have the ability to solve problems. Here are two examples. Here is why this company interests you, your company interests me. Then you look into the technology, the stack, the news that the company is headed to, maybe give some examples. And don't be superficial about it, because people will always ask a follow-up question. Oh, I heard that you are headed into major investments in AI. Oh, that's great. You heard that. What else did you hear? And you go like, I don't know. I only heard that much. No, so double click. triple click if required. So that is the prep that you need for each interview, and cannot like if you haven't gotten through one interview and your enthusiasm drops in the next one, doesn't doesn't really work well, because and it's a first test of resilience, right? And these are some of the facets and factors that will um, come in handy. People think of cognitive ability, resilience, conflict resolution, collaboration. Examples on any of these transcend job functions and roles. Of course, if you're applying for a specific niche role, which is exactly what you have done in your education, then of course those relevant examples will matter a lot. But as a starting point, these three or four factors are something that you want to keep in mind. Okay, so don't get into peer pressure, social media influence. There will typically be, as was the case in school as well, if you remember, the students who would study 2 hours and get 95, whereas you had to study 20 and get 85. Don't get into these kind of compares. Don't build unnecessary pressure. It's as you realize, there will be a lot of pressure coming your way later in life, so don't put yourself under pressure. If you are into sports, I could give you the sports analogy that if you're a good player, you'll never become a bad player, right? And so these are your starting years, your early years. You're bound to make some mistakes. You'll say something silly and stupid. All of us have. We've all said something silly and stupid all our lives. And, some of us regret it, and some of us, take it on the chin and say, okay, yeah, I was stupid back then, not so much now. And so it's okay even if you make a mistake. It's not such a, because the people on the other side have also gone through a similar route. They have come for an interview, but they were sitting for an interview maybe 20 years back or 30 years back. So it's not that they're seeing it for the first time. So always remember that people go through, they handle pressure differently. So don't let it build up so much. Enjoy the experience, and have that resilience of energy, sustaining that energy that you had for the first interview. Probably even if you had to give 10 more such interviews, you have the same degree of enthusiasm. And it's like strength of mind. Needless to say, the myth that you think that first job equals life is set, I'm all sorted, it generally doesn't happen like that, right? People would think like if I get the best package, and I mean, there's no harm in expecting that you want to get the best package, but oftentimes that is not the case, right? It's not about the package. 0 to 10 years is about learning and unlearning. Whatever that you've probably learned will help you in your job. Whatever some of the stuff that you have learned, you might even have to unlearn at the job, because I often notice there is a gap between when the academics finish and when the real job starts. There's no bridge. In some sense, and I'll touch upon on this when I speak about from the university or college standpoint. But there needs to be this, what's the right word? Coaching session or a bridge between academic and reality. And it's important that you talk to your parent if they have been in corporates, or some of the industry people, to get a sense on academic versus real life. What are the expectations of compensation, salary, negotiations, those kind of things, right? And people will come with a take it or leave it kind of mindset. And how do you pick up the right job? Those kind of things are secondary, not primary. The primary is that you've got to pick a role that you think you will be good at. Maximize your strengths rather than find roles which sound so challenging that you might get sucked into it and fail, right? In some sense, I'm saying pick a job which you think that you can hit the ground running, or pick a role if you can, if you're in a position. Not that it'll be a walk in the park, but it's something better to succeed at the start rather than take up a big challenge and then fail at it. And it has a mental impact, if you will. So do well. Good luck on your interviews. Stay calm. It's not the end of the world. And worst case scenario, if you do not get placed, it is not the end of the world. Please trust me. There will always be competition. There will always be roles available. You have to keep searching, keep talking to people. Basically, you land right in the middle of hustle. And it's no guarantee that people who have got placed, land up retaining those jobs and stuff like that. So don't lose hope, even if you're not placed. Many people have become successful leaders who have probably not got placed during campus interviews, and I know a lot of them, I can tell you that. And so, like they say, mornings never show the day. So with that, let's move on to the next segment. The colleges and the university, or the placement cells, if you will. You as a college or as a university have a very tough job. On one hand, there's a passion, there's a noble thing about imparting education. And there is the other challenging thing about it running as a business. There's a brand element, there's a peer pressure, college to college, and all those things are there. Quantity versus quality. And one thing that I've always asked and always want you to think about: does the student make the college, or does the college make the student? Think about it, right? And so it's because of good students the college become more famous, more branded. And then, of course, one can always say, because the college had great professors, great infrastructure, great enablement platform, that the student become better than before they came into the college. So I'd like you to consider both as in equal measures, that a great student, or developing a raw talent into a finished product is super critical. It is also important to realize that you have to ensure that there is a slight, what's the right word, difference that you bring to the child's life or the student's life, that they truly go back and or go into the corporate world and make a difference. And how do you enable that student? How do you develop those problem solving skills, and how to handle pressure? You've done a great job in providing infrastructure. You've done a great job in providing academics. You've probably hired some of the best professors and teachers and faculty, but they have to go that tiny bit extra to make a difference. Right? There have been so many. It's so easy to say, "Oh, I just had to complete the syllabus, so I completed the syllabus." It's their career, their lives. If they don't take it seriously, not my problem, right? We also have a challenge of maintaining college admissions year on year, ensuring 100% placements, ensuring all 100% seats are taken. Essentially in India, we have the herd mentality, where once a college does well, then it perpetually does well unless some major untoward event happens and everything. And so they perpetually will have 100%, all seats filled, and they even won't release a third list or a second list or whatever. And so, and if you're one of those colleges which is N-1, N being those top tier colleges which do not require any further branding people, and there's surplus of students applying, you are probably a new university or a new college or a new wing of an existing university or something on those lines. You find it the most hard to enter into this market and create a niche for yourself, and then and a brand for yourself. So again, as is the case with students, is the case with you, what you can control and what you cannot control. I think you do need to, especially from a branding standpoint, to have very solid campus placement officers who are from the corporate, who speak the language, who understand the gap between academics and reality, who can then go to a corporate and say, here is how we make a difference. Many a times I've seen the colleges err on the side of, we are so hard on academics, we are so hard on CGPAs and everything, that you will only have the creme de la creme. And I'm just thinking, globally, the conversation that is happening is ability over experience. What are we doing to enable ability, magnify, amplify ability? Yes, somebody could have a 8.5 or a 9 CGPA does not always translate that to be a great leader or a great potential, right? So yes, you can market the fact that 60% of your class is a 8.5 CGPA or above. To a hiring manager, to a hiring organization, what matters is the ability of this person to deliver in terms of the role that is at hand. How close or how far are they? They also know that, especially in India, the average attention span in a role is no longer than 12 to 18 months, right? So there is an attrition risk that is always there. 25%, 22% attrition costs the company a lot of money. So they're also looking for people who are, of course, they have to be good, also have a slightly longish run, and they can coach, mold, groom them into the next level, as it were. As is the case where we all know that 0 to 10 years, people are very, very restless in India. Every 2 years they need a promotion. They're looking for, I want growth. I'm missing out, the fear of missing out. And so part of the expectation is that, you have a coaching counseling session where you invite corporates and purely from what's happening in the real world scenario, and see if you can bridge that expectation gap and lift the class in general. It will always be the 80-20 rule, where 20% of your class will be the creme de la creme. They will easily get absorbed, but you as a placement coordinator, as a placement cell, you will need to get to about 70-80%, if not more, which are placed regularly. And it cannot be only on the dean or on some of the professors. It has to be a group collective effort. So how do you do that? One is, of course, invite the corporate folks and over a period of time, not just before the placement season, but also do some road shows within those corporates, well before time. Like if you do a road show saying that, can you give us like a half a day or 1 day tour of the facility where we can take some of the aspirational students to show how the actual work happens. And I'm sure a lot of corporates will be open. I know there's a element of privacy, element of confidentiality to it. Those things can be managed, I think. And it will, it's like inspiring students. Like, how do you inspire students to rise above and do something better? In some sense, making fans of the roles, not necessarily the companies. You want to go into technology, look, this is what happens in technology. If you want to go into fine arts, this is what happens in fine arts. This is how it eventually, here is how it rolls out eventually. And so sometimes that is very, very important. It's also important to realize that how to stay relevant in 4 years' time. And that's one of the things I always ask the colleges and the universities. What you're teaching right now is probably relevant. I know some colleges are teaching stuff that is relevant 5 years earlier or 7 years earlier. They will be left out because the landscape has changed so fast that they need to update their curriculum and be very agile with their curriculum. I think if you see the agility index, which are those colleges which will really make an impact and difference, are those who think what will happen by the time these students graduate. So we're in 2025, you should already be thinking, where will this role, technology subject evolve in 2029 or 2030? Where is the trend? And is there a enablement session to say, hey, this is where it is heading to. This is how we are going to equip you as far as possible. You can't cover for everything, but how agile are you to be able to stay relevant by the time the batch of students graduate the 4th year or 3rd year, as the case might be, as is the case with the masters as well, right? That is where you become different as a college, that you're thinking ahead and not just, bringing them, teaching them something that has worked in the past. This balance between historicals and future is something to think about. One of your biggest challenge, of course, is also parents. How do you handle parent expectation? I think absolutely required that you have a separate session just with parents, no children allowed, and you should make small batches, because large batches it becomes very difficult to manage. And so those conversations should happen 6 months, 8 months before the final placement season. So by the time they come for the placement orientation session, people have level set their expectations and what to expect. It's very important to coach and guide parents as well. I know we live in a very uh, what shall I say, hostile society. Let's put it that way. Why do I say hostile society? Because oftentimes I've seen, parents get very aggressive. Don't you know who I am? I've also worked in corporates. I also know I am also, from XYZ Premier College, and don't tell me what this is all about. So very, very tricky conversations. But it's important for the college to back you, the dean to back you, the education philosophy to back you of that college, that what all you're trying to do is to share with the parent what they should tell their children once they're back home, but also level set their expectations, what happens once the course finishes. And this can happen right at year one as well, right? While people have just applied to your college. And if that means some students, some parents say, oh, you don't have such a big academic rigor, and all you're saying is problem solving ability, and I don't see my daughter or son doing this, so I will take them out of your college. You should be able to be okay with that. Simple reason being, you need people who do well and reflect back on the college and say, it's because of this ability, this thinking, that I am able to make a difference tomorrow. And those are long-term investments. So how do you balance this out? And there has to be a plan and a program for it, for you to manage this expectation with the parents, right? And last but not the least, if you're a college or a university trying to make a name for yourself and sustain the name for yourself, there is the you can rely on the alumni network that is there, but being relevant with the alumni is also very important. Like, how do you build a culture of alumni? Almost all colleges have an alumni network. There is a website where people almost probably never meet or never engage. I rarely see a very active college and alumni engagement platform where there is an active engagement. There are some pockets here and there, of course, but in general, that's an area of improvement for most colleges who just think my job is to just take the fees, ensure this is delivered, course is completed, what else can we do, right, and move on. And so it's important to separate yourself and elevate yourself as a college every year in terms of quality, in terms of the ability to impact a student's life. How else do you do that, right? And so you build a strong foundation, you bring them closer to reality, and then equip them for the real world by various activities, it could be psychological counseling, it could be career counseling, it could be real life, like I said, corporate exposure, touring the role, the facility, as the case might be, and also making real world scenarios, like, why don't you have a session on understanding how an earnings call happens and what are the points to pick up. So what happens is, by the time, if you do this regularly from year one, by the time they get to year 4 or year 3, as the case might be, they're mentally already used to that vocabulary. And this is, of course, relevant for not all streams, but specific streams. Likewise, if somebody's getting into mass communication, for example, then the reality check of what is the next generation media look like, what's journalism, what is the future of journalism given the advent of AI. Having these relevant and real conversations is far more critical than just covering the syllabus in chapters. Of course, you have to cover the basics, but also, like I said, think how the situation, the landscape will be once the course is completed. And that's how you will ensure that your students stay relevant to the course they have just spent 3 years, 4 years learning and spending time. Finally, the parent. Oh my God. I've heard many a parent, many conversations during the placement season, and it's almost like, oh, I have paid so much money. What return of investment do I get? It's not like that. You should not be thinking like a return of investment. You should think what skills, life skills your child has acquired. That excellence on skills is monetizable. And of course, there's nothing wrong in thinking that your child should be in the best company, but it cannot be so blatant that you say, oh, what is the highest package? Like the highest package comes with a lot of uh, caveats to it. If somebody's got a 50 lakh package as a fresh graduate, please don't think it is a general across the line. And yes, you could say my child is the best, so why shouldn't she get 50 lakhs? She's also eligible. She can also do that. So is that thought wrong? Not entirely wrong, but also it's important not to get disappointed if your child does not get 50 lakhs, right? If they get 40 lakhs, that's good enough. Remind yourself that how they start is not how they will end their careers. How they start is not about showing off to your neighborhood that, oh, look, my child got 40 lakhs or 50 lakhs of package. That's not the goal or intent. The goal or intent is your child enjoying and maximizing the potential that they have displayed in the preceding 3-4 years, and is the organization that he or she is entering recognizing that? Because if that bridge, if that handshake is solid, you will rest assured that money will be the last thing to worry about. People are always looking for excellence. People are always looking for brilliance. People are always looking for that X factor that one new employee brings to the table and say, he or she is the next rising star. And there are enough examples, trust me, enough examples where people have got decent packages to start off, and they've just petered out. They've just fizzled out. The pressure of the corporate, the complexity, the ambiguity, like they say, VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, chaos, and ambiguity. The VUCA environment hits them. People often get confused, and then everything is bad. The company is bad. There is so much pressure. Of course, there's going to be so much pressure. Whoever said it is going to be a walk in the park? It is not a walk in the park. So somewhere, yes, you've put in your hard-earned money. It's college tuition is not cheap. Most of these colleges are very expensive, and you've invested so much of money. But also realize that money alone doesn't, give you the return of investment. There are multiple other factors. The students' will to do well. The students, how they have appeared at the interview. Do they match the company's culture and company fitment? There are at least 10, 15 points that need to get checked off before somebody gets, the above median package. What I mean by that is every role has a lower, a mid, and a higher range. In general, most, and I don't speak for any corporate, just out of inference, in general, people would start at the lower mid to mid, unless the candidate or the student completely blows their mind away. Like, oh my God, this person is so different from the 56 other people we spoke with. And so we will go above median. And getting the top salary is something that somebody would have done extraordinary at the interview, and or made connected in a way where the organization instantly saw the utility of that idea or that thought or that conversation, that, oh, this person said this is how they will tackle a complex problem, and this is exactly what we were looking for. They get fast tracked. They get the top dollar. If your child does not get the top dollar, it does not mean your investment is wasted, right? Please remind yourself that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and you can't sprint a marathon. Right? So you do not blame your child, or do not Do not let your spirits fall down. Do not get under the peer pressure that other parent have. Oh, look at my child has got a 30 lakh package and your child is getting only 18 lakhs. Those are very, very juvenile and very silly. And insulate yourself. I know it's difficult. As silly as it might sound, I know it's very difficult. But insulate yourself, because mornings never show the day. You will see that in 2 years' time, maybe your child is earning 20% more than this person who started out more than your child, but probably stuck at the same level. And we have seen that multiple times. And in my professional career, I have seen so many times that, the oldest cliche in the book, never judge a book by its cover. And so we have seen many a times where someone, they show great promise right at the start, but 2 years, 3 years down the line, you realize they kind of lost their way. And despite your best efforts, you have to let them go. You can only manage it up to a point, and then you cannot, right? It consumes too much bandwidth. They have still not ramped up, not figured out the company culture. They're making mistakes. And there is a threshold they reach of poor performance there where we have to let people go. And so do not let any early indicators become in your mind as the final indicators. Early indicators are early indicators. They have no bearing what happens 1 year down the line, 2 years down the line. So if your child has not got the top package, it may not be such a bad thing. They might get it a year later. They might get even more 2 years later. You don't know. If a child has not even made it to the interviews, as in he appeared for all the interviews but didn't get placed at all, even then you shouldn't let your enthusiasm or positivity down. The last thing you want is to make your child feel terrible or very, very vulnerable, because they're already feeling there's a peer pressure, there's a sense of shame, there is a sense of I'm feeling shitty. Don't magnify it, right? Don't magnify it, don't amplify it. As a parent, you calm down and say, look, we have to keep trying. And that's a life lesson, right? Just like you have kept trying, you've not given up, right? And so your child is just starting out, so they shouldn't give up either. So reinforce positivity and say, you can do it, you will do it, it's a matter of time, and you will get it. Parents, reset your expectations about compensation. I think organizations are looking for people who have a high EQ, who have high cognitive ability, who have analytical abilities which are very solid. They can grasp something very quickly and solve things, who are very up to speed on what the company is doing or is headed to. And so in some sense, don't think that, I know your child is special to you, and this might be difficult for you to hear, but as is the other parent. The other parent is thinking that their child is the best. Like, my child is the best in all the class of 30 students or 50 students. And so that's where it matters that you understand that you might think your child is the best, but it's some of the other organizations who are there to hire, they also need to think the same way. And if they don't, it doesn't mean that that's a bad organization or bad people. They might not have found a fit, and that's okay. Not finding a fit is okay. So I know these are hard things, but be objective as a parent. If you do not display maturity, if you do not display objectivity, how do you expect your child to display objectivity and maturity? If you're going to have an emotional outburst because your child didn't get the top package, then that's not going to set a right example for your child later in the organization, as they will realize that many a times we see later in life that there is only one promotion and 10 people, and then they don't get that promotion. Almost no one ever, I won't say ever, but majority, nobody will tell you that, oh, I got my promotion in advance. 99% of the time, it's always that my promotion was overdue. I should have got my promotion much earlier. I didn't. And so it takes time. Remind yourself it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and you can't sprint a marathon. So you will pace yourself. Some years will be good, some years not so good, and that's how your career has been. You've gone through highs and lows, you've gone through difficult times, and you have survived. You've manage to get your child a great education, and then you have to keep supporting them, right? That's all I could say from a student, from a college, and from a parent, expectation setting standpoint. It's important that we all stay calm. I know these are, in a capitalistic environment, um, the competition is very tough. It's very tough. There's no two ways about it. But it's important to not lose your mind, because some of the stuff that your children will do is probably not even invented yet, or it's not discovered yet. So there's a long way to go. As a college, as a university, you have to keep evolving, keep being agile about the future, where it's like they say in ice hockey, right? It's not where the puck is where the puck will be. And so you've got to be there in advance. And so what is it that you're doing, 2 or 3 things to stay relevant 4 years later, so that when the child graduates, they're still relevant to the time and age of that year. Likewise, if you're a student, there is a lot that you need to learn. There's as much as you've accomplished by academics. The moment you step onto that line and you sign on the dotted line, you suddenly find yourself a little different. And one of the first feelings I remember is like being treated, I guess, as a man as against a boy. Like as a child, you are still a student and whatever. Now you're suddenly being, as a professional or as a fellow colleague, instead of friends, you say, meet my colleague. And that mental graduation has to happen as well. And you will just do fine. Trust me. If your thought processes are clear, if you have done your academics well, then probability is that you will do a much better job than many other people who struggle. And for those who struggle, it's okay that in your formative years, in your early years, you haven't figured things out. It will work out. Don't worry. It's a 30-year career, plus minus. Some of you might retire early. Some of you might work a little longer, but that's fine. It's a 3-decade long career. So first 2-3 years, you have the foundation. So take your time. So it's fine. Love to share some more thoughts, but they are not exhaustive. But leave your questions, comments, anybody. I'm happy to see what I can share if I can. There are no, like I said, I hope you get the spirit behind sharing it. It's not prescriptive. It's reflective for you to think through these things. And if you've figured it out, then if you know what works for you, always follow that. Don't listen to anybody. Right? If your thought clarity is there, you cracked the code, as it were. That's what you do. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as I did sharing it with you. Love to hear your thoughts, feedback, suggestions, comments, or maybe some of your experiences. And of course, if you know someone who needs to hear this, be kind enough and share this content with them. I'd be very grateful. And if you like this, then subscribe to BasTalk, and I will try and bring out similar episodes or newer content every week. So until we meet the next time, stay well, stay safe. You know where to reach me on LinkedIn. It's IN/AAYANBAN. On platform X, it's Ionisms, #AAYNISMS. And of course, on the website, it's BasTalk.in. Until we meet the next time, this is your host, Ian, and you are listening to BasTalk. Peace out.